Don't answer the door at 12:04. A few weeks ago, I moved to a sleepy little town called Meadow Lakes in Alaska, about an hour north of Anchorage. I'll admit, as a software developer, I never thought I'd be living in a remote town in Alaska, seemingly 1,000 miles from nowhere. But I just couldn't refuse the offer. This hot new AI startup based in none other than San Francisco was looking to break new ground by gathering real-world data from remote regions of the world that have been mostly untouched by technology. The project pitch certainly sounded interesting to me, but I'd be lying if I didn't admit the main driver was a free house and a $250,000 salary. The move couldn't have been easier too. I still lived with my parents, so there wasn't much for the movers to page up and take to the new house, and my amazing new salary meant I could realistically buy whatever I needed once settled in any way. It was a 2-day trip from the East Coast to Anchorage, from which I simply had an hour's drive to my new residence. When I finally arrived around noon on the second day of my travel, I was pleasantly surprised to find that not only did all my stuff make it to the house, but it was fully furnished as well. A kitchen full of appliances, a living room with a sectional and recliner. Admittedly, I only cared about the recliner, but the only thing missing was a bed. Not a big deal for me since I was known to fall asleep in my chair back home anyway. No sense changing habits now. Just as I had come back downstairs from touring the rest of my new house, which was entirely too big for a bachelor such as myself, I heard a knock at the door. Upon answering the knock, I was greeted by a rather skinny, middle-aged man with dark gray hair and one of the goofiest smiles I had ever seen. "Good morning, mister," the man said cheerfully. "You must be the newcomer everyone's been talking about. Anyway, my name's Lenny Stringer, and I'm your neighbor just next door. Feel free to stop by and ask for anything at all," Lenny said in the sweetest demeanor, with almost childlike innocence about him. Then Lenny's face immediately switched to a more serious look. "And most importantly, do not under any circumstances answer the door at 12:04. After exchanging pleasantries with Lenny, I mentioned that I was tired from all the traveling, but I'd connect with him later in the week. Not answering the door at 12:04 seemed oddly specific, though Lenny did seem rather in some ways, so perhaps he was just warning me about people causing trouble late at night. This was a rather remote region of the country after all. I had spent the remainder of the day unpacking the few boxes of things I had moved from my parents' house just to get it all out of the way. If I hadn't done so immediately, then anything left in a box would probably stay that way. The sun had set at this point in the day, and I was settled into my new recliner, dozing off. It felt as if my eyes had only been closed for 5 minutes when I jumped awake, nearly falling out of my chair at the sound of a loud banging on the front door. Without thinking, I quickly walked over and opened the door. "You didn't even look at the time, did you? Do you want to ruin your life?" Lenny said in an oddly terrified voice. Whatever nonsense he was spewing at this point, he certainly seemed to believe it. "All right, Lenny, I'll pay close attention to the time next time," I said in a rather condescending and annoyed tone. Lenny walked away with a nod as I closed the front door and made for my chair in the living room. Although Lenny's interruption was rather irritating, I've always had a knack for quickly falling back to sleep more often than not. This time must not have been much different from the usual, because I barely remember reclining my chair before passing back out. Knock, knock, knock. I was once again yanked out of a deep slumber by the sound of someone ham-fist knocking at my front door. This time I looked at my watch, and sure enough, it said 12:04 a.m. Clearly, Lenny was committed to whatever fantasy was going on in his mind, but my patience was wearing thin, and I fully planned on letting him know exactly how I felt about getting woken up by nonsense twice in the same night. A few minutes later, I decided to walk up to the door and say, "Lenny, I know it's you. I remembered your silly warning about 12:04, so there, I waited to answer. Now can you stop knocking on my door so I can get some damn peace and quiet?" The knocking had immediately stopped, and there was nothing but silence. Completely uninterested in seeing Lenny's face again, I turned back towards the living room. Upon taking the first step away from the front door, I heard a chilling voice that seemed like it was Lenny. Please, I'm not playing this time. Something is wrong. I don't feel right."